The woman who built her career on my work didn't realize something that morning. One day, she would need me, and I would be unavailable. I'd woken up that morning believing Regina Cole would finally see me. 3 years at Hartwell & Associates. 3 years of arriving before the security guards unlocked the glass doors on Peachtree Street, of leaving long after the cleaning crew had emptied the trash bins and vacuumed around my desk. 3 years of converting her impossible demands into flawless execution, of turning her half-formed ideas into comprehensive strategies, of making her look like the smartest person in every room she entered. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Your support truly helps this community grow. Thank you for being here. The work itself had become a kind of meditation. I'd arrive in darkness, make coffee in the small break room while the building was still silent, then settle at my desk with the peculiar peace that comes from working while the rest of the city sleeps. No interruptions, no performances, just me and the work, the way I'd always preferred it. Regina would arrive around 9, breezing past my desk with her designer bag and her Starbucks, always surprised to find me already deep into whatever project she'd assigned the day before. "You're here early again," she'd say, like it was remarkable rather than routine. Like dedication was exceptional instead of expected. Those early hours were when I did my best thinking, when I could spread documents across my desk without worrying about someone walking by and questioning why the junior associate had access to senior-level materials, when I could draft strategy memos in my own voice before translating them into Regina's more polished, more confident tone. She had a way of taking my careful analysis and making it sound effortless. I'd spend hours researching precedents, analyzing regulatory frameworks, identifying potential challenges and solutions. She'd read my memo once, maybe twice, then present it to clients as if the insights had occurred to her spontaneously, brilliantly, the natural output of her superior legal mind. "This is excellent foundational work," she'd told me once, reviewing a compliance framework I'd spent 3 weeks developing. "Once you understand how to think at a more strategic level, you'll be able to do this kind of analysis yourself." I'd authored every word, every insight, every recommendation, but I'd smiled and thanked her for the feedback. 3 years of watching her take credit for strategies I'd drafted at 2 a.m. while she slept in her Buckhead penthouse, for presentations I'd rehearsed alone in empty conference rooms, for insights I'd developed through hundreds of hours of research she'd never personally conducted. The invisible labor was constant. She'd send emails at midnight with quick questions that required hours of research. She'd ask for rough thoughts by morning that needed to be polished enough for client presentation. She'd request background information that became the foundation of proposals she'd present as her original work. And always, the praise was structured to keep me grateful rather than questioning. "You're so good at the detail work," she'd say. "That's a real gift. Not everyone can do deep research without getting lost in it. You stay focused." Translation: "You're good at the work I don't want to do myself. I love your enthusiasm for these projects," she'd tell me when I'd pull another late night. "That kind of dedication is what builds careers. Just remember, there's a difference between working hard and working smart. You'll learn that balance." Translation: "Your effort is expected, but don't confuse effort with the strategic thinking I claim as my domain. I'm so glad I took a chance on you," she'd said more than once, usually when I'd completed something particularly complex. A lot of partners wouldn't have been willing to mentor someone without traditional connections, but I believe in developing raw talent. Translation: "You should be grateful I'm willing to exploit you." I'd learned to decode her language, to hear what she meant beneath what she said, to understand that her mentorship was really management, her guidance really control, her investment really extraction. But I'd also learned that survival meant playing along, smiling, nodding, expressing gratitude for opportunities that were really obligations. The annual summit at the Peachtree Plaza felt different that year. Regina had been hinting at promotions for weeks, dropping comments about next steps and leadership development, and recognizing emerging talent. "Partner track," she'd said over coffee one morning, her voice warm with implied promise. "Real leadership opportunities. Your time is coming, Tasha." I'd allowed myself to believe her, to imagine that 3 years of invisible labor were about to become visible recognition, that the work I'd done in her shadow was about to carry my name. My grandmother had called that morning from Birmingham, voice full of the kind of pride that made my chest tight with both joy and pressure. She'd raised me after my mother died when I was 12, had worked 2 jobs to help pay for college, had sat in the audience at my law school graduation, crying tears that mixed grief for her daughter, with pride for her granddaughter. "Is this finally your moment, baby?" she'd asked, her voice trembling slightly. 3 years is a long time to wait. 3 years is long enough to prove yourself. I'd assured her it was. I'd believed it. I'd spent 3 years building toward this moment, 3 years of arriving first and leaving last, 3 years of making Regina brilliant. Surely that counted for something. I'd worn my best suit that day, navy Tahari, the one I'd saved 6 months to afford, buying it on a payment plan from Nordstrom and keeping the receipt in my wallet like proof of investment in my future. The one that fit like it had been tailored specifically for my frame. That made me look like I belonged in boardrooms, like I'd earned my place at tables where decisions were made. My natural hair was professionally styled into a twist-out that had taken 2 hours the night before, each section carefully shaped and set with products I'd researched for weeks to find the right combination. I'd practiced the style 3 times before the summit to ensure it looked polished, but natural, professional, but authentically me. I'd stood in front of my bathroom mirror that morning, adjusting my collar, checking my makeup, looking at my reflection and thinking, this is what success looks like. This is the version of myself I've been building toward. I looked like I belonged in that boardroom, like I'd earned my place at that table. I should have known better. The presentation was flawless because I'd made it flawless. 6 months of market analysis, competitive positioning, regulatory compliance strategy for our biggest client, a healthcare conglomerate worth $800 million in annual revenue. I'd built every slide, starting with rough notes and research, then developing frameworks, then refining language, then perfecting visual design. I'd verified every data point against 3 separate sources because Regina had once casually mentioned that credibility collapses with a single factual error. I'd rehearsed the pitch until the transitions were muscle memory and the talking points felt natural rather than scripted, practicing alone in conference rooms after hours, timing each section, adjusting pacing, ensuring every word served a purpose. The work had consumed my life for 6 months, evenings, weekends, the vacation days I'd canceled because we're in a critical phase and Regina needed support, the dinners I'd missed with friends because this client is too important and the analysis couldn't wait. I'd lived inside this project, understood it at a cellular level, knew every regulatory nuance and competitive dynamic and strategic implication. It was mine in every way that mattered, except the one way that would be acknowledged. Regina had introduced it as our proposal when we'd started, a collaboration between her strategic vision and my research support. She'd clicked through my slides while I stood beside her at the front of the boardroom, my role ostensibly to provide technical backup, to answer detailed questions, to demonstrate the depth of analysis, supporting her recommendations. I'd believed I was about to be acknowledged, about to be elevated from invisible support to visible contributor, about to finally receive credit for the work that had consumed my life for half a year. The executive team was all there. James Morrison, the CFO with his silver hair and tailored Tom Ford suits, known for asking questions that exposed shallow thinking. Sarah Chen from the New York office, who'd built her reputation on ruthless efficiency and even more ruthless talent assessment, who could identify potential and mediocrity within minutes of observation. Marcus Chen from Chicago, no relation to Sarah, who'd built his reputation on asking questions nobody else thought to ask, on finding the gaps in analysis that others missed. David Williams, the oldest partner who'd founded Hartwell 40 years ago and still attended every major presentation, whose approval still mattered more than anyone else's. The room carried weight. These were people who made decisions about careers, about partnerships, about who belonged in leadership and who remained in support roles. These were people whose opinions shaped trajectories. I'd prepared for this room, not just the presentation, but the moment. I'd researched each partner's background, their priorities, the questions they typically asked. I'd anticipated objections and prepared responses. I'd done everything I'd been taught to do to demonstrate readiness for advancement. Then Marcus Chen asked a single question about Medicare reimbursement codes. Specific, technical. The kind of question that separated people who'd done the actual work from people who'd simply read the summary, who'd lived inside the analysis from who'd skimmed the conclusions. "That's a great question," Regina said, deploying that boardroom smile I'd spent months trying to emulate, the one that suggested both competence and approachability, confidence and collegiality. "This is exactly why we need experienced leadership on complex accounts." She turned to me, not with encouragement, not with the pride of a mentor about to showcase her protege's expertise, about to share credit, about to elevate someone she'd developed. With dismissal so casual it took my breath. "Tasha, you did well compiling this information, but I think we need to be realistic about capability levels here." Her voice was pleasant, almost maternal, like she was doing me a favor by managing expectations, protecting me from embarrassment. "Data collection isn't the same as strategic thinking. Why don't you take notes while I walk the board through the actual analysis?" The room went silent in that particular way rooms do when everyone recognizes cruelty, but no one will name it. When witnessing injustice becomes uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to intervene. The kind of silence that says, "We see this, we know this is wrong, but we're not going to risk anything to stop it." I felt my face flush hot, then cold. Felt my hands begin to tremble slightly, so I pressed them against my thighs where no one could see. Felt something inside my chest crack, not dramatically, not with noise, just a quiet internal fracture that I knew would take time to understand fully. I wasn't asked to sit down. I was moved aside, physically repositioned to stand against the wall with my tablet, transformed in seconds from presenter to stenographer, from strategist to invisible support staff, from person to function. The wall was cool against my back. I remember that. I remember the texture of the wallpaper, a subtle pattern I'd never noticed before. I remember watching Regina take my position at the front of the room, watching her inhabit the space I'd prepared to occupy, watching her become the expert on work I'd created. Regina spent the next 45 minutes presenting my work, not our work, mine, my research, developed through late nights and early mornings, through weekends and canceled plans and sacrificed time with people I cared about. My framework, built from scratch, after identifying gaps in existing compliance approaches, after recognizing patterns others had missed. My recommendations, refined through dozens of iterations and stress-tested against every regulatory scenario I could imagine, against every potential objection and challenge. She presented it all as if she'd conceived it, developed it, perfected it herself. As if the insights had emerged from her expertise rather than my labor. As if the strategic thinking she was demonstrating in real time was hers rather than mine, translated from my voice to hers, but originating entirely in my mind. And she was good at it. That was the thing. She presented my work beautifully, confidently, with the kind of polish that comes from not having to worry about being questioned, from knowing that your credibility is assumed rather than something you have to earn with every sentence. She'd read my memos enough times to understand the logic, to follow the reasoning I'd built. She could present my conclusions as long as no one pushed too hard on the methodology, as long as the questions stayed at the strategic level rather than drilling into technical details. James Morrison praised her innovative approach to reimbursement compliance. Sarah Chen called it exactly the kind of forward-thinking leadership Hartwell needs at the partner level. Marcus Chen nodded appreciatively at her handling of his technical question, which she'd answered by paraphrasing my memo almost verbatim, apparently satisfied that she understood the nuances. David Williams, who'd been mostly silent, leaned forward during her conclusion. "Regina, this is exceptional work. This is the caliber of strategic thinking that justifies our premium rates. The client is going to be very pleased. This is exactly why you're being considered for managing partner." No one asked who'd actually built it. No one questioned why the person who'd compiled all this data wasn't capable of strategic analysis. No one seemed to notice the logical impossibility of what was happening, that I'd been competent enough to be trusted with 6 months of complex research, but somehow not competent enough to present my own findings. Or maybe they noticed and didn't care. Maybe this was how it always worked, and I'd been naive to expect anything different. When Regina returned to her seat, she patted my arm with genuine warmth, like a teacher encouraging a struggling student, like someone who'd just done me a favor. "Good experience for you to see how senior strategists handle board presentations. Take notes for your development plan. This is how you learn." I took notes. I smiled when expected. I nodded at appropriate moments. My handwriting looked steady on the screen. That surprised me. I'd expected it to shake, to reveal something of what I was feeling. But years of practice had taught me control, had taught me that survival meant maintaining composure, regardless of internal chaos. I went to the bathroom during the break and locked myself in a stall in the empty women's lounge, focusing on breathing until my hands stopped shaking and the burning behind my eyes receded. 4 counts in. 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. The technique my therapist had taught me for managing anxiety, for preventing panic, for maintaining function when everything inside wanted to collapse. I'd never imagined I'd need it after a professional triumph. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head, asking if this was my moment. Full of pride, full of hope, full of belief that hard work and excellence would be recognized, that 3 years of dedication had been building towards something meaningful. This was my moment, just not the one either of us had imagined. I stared at the marble wall tiles, counting my breaths, counting the tiles, counting anything that would keep me anchored in something concrete rather than drowning in the humiliation of what had just happened. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. When I returned to the conference room, Regina was holding court with the partners, accepting congratulations, laughing at something David Williams had said, comfortable and confident in her success. She saw me and waved me over with that same maternal smile, the one that said, "Come, child, see how it's done." "Tasha did excellent work on the data collection," she told the group, her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that might have looked supportive to anyone who didn't understand the context. "She's got real potential once she develops more strategic maturity. I'm really enjoying mentoring her." I smiled and thanked her for the opportunity to learn. The words came automatically, trained into me by 3 years of practice, by understanding that gratitude was expected regardless of circumstances. "You're lucky to have Regina as a mentor," James Morrison told me, his voice kind. "She's one of the best at developing junior talent." "I am lucky," I said, and meant it in a way. Lucky to finally understand exactly what I was dealing with. Lucky to see clearly what I'd been trying not to see for 3 years. The next morning, Regina's assistant forwarded me the client thank you email. It had arrived at 7 a.m., apparently drafted late the previous night, while the presentation was still fresh in their minds. It praised Regina's brilliant strategic vision and comprehensive understanding of healthcare compliance complexity. It described her presentation as exactly the level of sophisticated thinking we need during this critical regulatory transition. It requested her specifically for the implementation phase, noting that leadership of this caliber is exactly what our organization requires. The email was CC'd to the entire Hartwell executive team, to the client's board of directors, to what felt like everyone who mattered in Atlanta's legal community. Regina's reputation, already strong, was being cemented as exceptional. My name appeared once, in the signature block listed after the paralegals, formatted in the same small font used for administrative support, research support provided by Tasha Lawrence. Research support. 6 months of strategic analysis reduced to research support. I forwarded it to my personal Gmail account, a habit I'd developed over the past year without fully understanding why. Some instinct for documentation, for preserving evidence of something I couldn't yet articulate. Then I returned to my desk and opened the professional development plan Regina had created for me 3 months earlier. I'd reviewed it dozens of times, had treated it like a roadmap, had believed it represented her genuine investment in my growth. Now I read it differently. Tasha shows promise but needs significant development before assuming senior-level responsibilities. Current assessment. Strong research capabilities, needs improvement in strategic thinking and client management. Recommended timeline, 3 to 5 years of intensive mentorship before junior partner consideration. 3 to 5 years. After I'd already given her 3 years of work that she'd claimed as her own, that had elevated her reputation, that had made her look brilliant. The plan positioned me as perpetually unready, perpetually requiring her guidance, perpetually one step behind where I actually was. It was documentation, I realized, a paper trail establishing that I was not capable of the work I'd been doing all along, creating legal cover for taking credit, for keeping me in a support role indefinitely. It was comprehensive in its construction of my inadequacy. Detailed examples of times I'd struggled with strategic thinking, which, upon reflection, were instances where I'd questioned her approach or suggested alternatives. Evidence of my need for close supervision, which really meant times she'd had to revise my work to match her preferences rather than my original, often more thorough analysis. I'd believed it was developmental. Now I understood it was imprisonment. For the next 6 months, I maintained perfect invisibility. I became exactly what the development plan said I was, excellent at execution, requiring supervision, grateful for mentorship. I arrived before Regina every morning, usually by 6 a.m., and stayed after she left, rarely before 8 p.m. 14-hour days became routine. 16-hour days became common when deadlines approached. I compiled her reports with meticulous attention to detail, anticipating her preferences, formatting everything exactly as she liked. I built her presentations with the kind of visual polish that made complex information feel accessible, that made her look sophisticated and thoughtful. I drafted her proposals with language that sounded confident and authoritative, that captured her voice while originating entirely from my expertise. I made her look brilliant while she ascended to partnership. The work was numbing in its repetition. Wake, work, sleep, repeat. My apartment became just a place to shower and change clothes. My friends stopped inviting me to things because I always canceled. My grandmother worried about my voice on our weekly calls, said I sounded tired, asked if I was taking care of myself. I assured her I was fine, that this was what building a career looked like, that the sacrifice would be worth it. I'm not sure either of us believed it, but I maintained the performance because I didn't yet know what else to do, because leaving without a plan felt like admitting defeat, because some part of me still believed that if I just worked hard enough, if I just proved myself thoroughly enough, recognition would eventually come. Regina became managing partner of the healthcare division in April. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, delivered via email to the entire firm, followed by a celebration in the main conference room with champagne and congratulations. The Atlanta Business Chronicle ran a 3-page feature the following week. Regina Cole, Visionary Leader Reshaping Legal Strategy in the Post-ACA Landscape. The article was accompanied by professional photos of her in the corner office that overlooked downtown Atlanta, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and custom furniture, the one that represented a rival. I'd helped decorate that office. She'd asked my opinion on furniture because I'd mentioned once that I'd studied interior design before law school. I'd spent hours helping her choose pieces that would convey success without ostentation, sophistication without coldness. My design degree, like my legal expertise, had become another form of invisible labor. The article quoted her extensively about leadership philosophy, about developing talent, about creating pathways for the next generation of legal strategists. The quotes were eloquent, thoughtful, inspiring. Success is about recognizing talent and developing future leaders, she'd said. That's what separates good managers from great mentors. I've been fortunate to work with dedicated people who believe in our mission, who are willing to put in the work even when nobody's watching. That's the foundation of any successful practice. The article didn't name me, didn't name anyone, just praised Regina's leadership, her vision, her exceptional strategic mind. At her celebration dinner at Canoe, an expensive restaurant in Buckhead where we'd taken important clients, she'd toasted the team with champagne that cost more than my monthly car payment. I couldn't have reached this position without the dedication of talented people who believe in our mission, she'd said, her eyes finding mine across the table. People like Tasha, who put in the work even when nobody's watching. That's what makes a great team. Everyone looked at me and smiled. Warm smiles, approving smiles, the kind of smiles that said, "See, you're valued. See, she appreciates you." I smiled back and raised my glass, playing my part in the performance. But inside, something had shifted. Her words, meant to sound generous, felt like confirmation. I was valued for putting in work when nobody was watching, for being invisible, for making her look good without requiring recognition. That was my role. That was my value, not my strategic thinking, not my expertise, my willingness to labor without credit. That night, sitting in my one-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland, surrounded by case files and unwashed coffee mugs, I updated my resume for the first time in 3 years. It felt dangerous, transgressive, like I was betraying something, though I couldn't articulate what. Then I made a list. Every healthcare regulation specialist in Atlanta, every boutique firm that handled complex Medicare compliance, every general counsel at hospitals and pharmaceutical companies who'd sat through presentations where Regina took credit for my work, every compliance director who'd asked follow-up questions that Regina had deflected to me to answer offline, creating relationships she didn't know existed. I didn't send applications. I didn't query about openings. I didn't position myself as someone looking for employment, desperate for any opportunity. I sent solutions. I spent weeks developing detailed analyses of regulatory problems I'd noticed in passing, issues these organizations were probably facing but might not have identified yet. Problems with Medicare reimbursement structures they were handling inefficiently, approaches that could save them significant time and money, case studies demonstrating exactly what I could do, using sanitized versions of work I'd completed but never been credited for. Each piece was carefully crafted, professional, insightful, valuable on its own, regardless of whether they hired me. I sent them from a new email address, not my Hartwell account, which would have been both unethical and stupid. My own domain, T. Lawrence Consulting. The name felt presumptuous at first. Consulting. Like I was claiming expertise I wasn't sure I was allowed to claim, but I'd been doing the work for 3 years. The only thing missing was my name on it. The responses started within a week, which surprised me. I'd expected silence, or polite dismissals, or vague encouragement to apply for positions that didn't exist yet. Instead, I got meeting requests, coffee conversations that turned into substantive discussions about their compliance challenges, exploratory conversations that revealed significant gaps in their current approaches, requests for proposals on a contract basis, small projects that wouldn't conflict with my Hartwell employment, but would allow them to test my capabilities without committing to a full engagement. A regional hospital system dealing with Medicare audits, a pharmaceutical company navigating FDA compliance questions, a medical device manufacturer confused about reimbursement coding changes, small firms who couldn't afford Hartwell's $800 per hour rates but needed Hartwell-level expertise, mid-size organizations dealing with compliance questions too small for their primary counsel to prioritize but too important to ignore. I took them all. Every evening after leaving Hartwell, every weekend, every spare moment I could carve from what was supposed to be my full-time position as Regina's invisible engine. I built a parallel practice while maintaining my role at her side, never letting the quality of my Hartwell work slip, never giving her reason to question my commitment or my loyalty. The exhaustion was profound. I'd work my regular day at Hartwell, 14 hours of making Regina brilliant, then come home and work another 4 hours on my own clients. Weekends disappeared into client calls and research and drafting deliverables. I lost weight without meaning to, stopped sleeping more than 5 hours a night, developed a persistent headache that lived behind my eyes and never quite went away. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years: ownership. These clients knew my name, thanked me directly, paid me for my expertise without filtering it through someone else's ego, returned with new questions because they trusted my judgment specifically, not because I was attached to a prestigious firm. By August, I had 6 retainer clients, each paying modest monthly fees for ongoing compliance consultation. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would replace my Hartwell salary, but enough to prove it was possible. By October, 15 clients with several requesting expanded services. By December, I'd made more in consulting fees than Hartwell paid me annually, and I was turning down projects because I physically didn't have time. The double life was unsustainable. I knew that, but I didn't know yet what I was building toward, what I was preparing for. I just knew I couldn't stop. I gave my notice on January 15th, 2 weeks as required by my contract. Professional, clean. No explanation beyond pursuing other opportunities. I submitted the paperwork through HR's online portal at 8 a.m. before Regina arrived at the office, before I could lose my nerve. Regina called me into her office within an hour. She must have been checking her email from home, or maybe HR had alerted her immediately. She arrived at the office flustered, without her usual composed entrance, and summoned me before she'd even set down her bag. "Is this some kind of mistake?" she asked, her computer screen showing my resignation letter. "A formatting error with HR's system?" "No," I said. "I'm resigning, pursuing other opportunities." She stared at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't understand. "Is this about money? Because I was planning to recommend you for senior associate next review cycle. Significant raise, better benefits package. I've been building the case for your promotion." The lie was so smooth it almost sounded true. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I've accepted another opportunity." "Where?" The question came quickly, sharply. Not concerned for my welfare, concerned about what firm was stealing her resource. Independent consulting. Her confusion shifted to something between amusement and concern, the expression you'd give a child who'd announced plans to become an astronaut or a professional athlete. Sweet, naive, destined for disappointment. "Tasha, that's not realistic. You need institutional support, mentorship, access to resources." She leaned forward, her voice taking on that maternal quality I'd come to recognize as manipulation disguised as care. "You're talented, but you're not ready to work without supervision. You need someone to guide your strategic development, to help you mature as a lawyer." I'd written her partnership acceptance speech, had drafted her last 3 keynote presentations, had built the compliance framework that had won Hartwell its biggest client, but I wasn't ready to work without supervision. "I understand," I said. "Thank you for everything you've taught me." She studied me for a moment, like she was trying to determine if I was being sincere or sarcastic. I kept my face neutral, pleasant, the expression I'd perfected over 3 years. Apparently deciding on sincere, she relaxed slightly. Well, if it doesn't work out. And Tasha, realistically, independent consulting is incredibly difficult for someone at your level. My door is always open. You can always come back. I'll make sure there's a place for you. That's very generous. I mean it. You've got potential. You just need more time to develop. There's no shame in that. Everyone develops at their own pace. 3 years of making her brilliant translated into, you need more time to develop. My last day was February 1st. They gave me a card signed by all the partners, each signature accompanied by a brief, generic message about wishing me well. Best of luck. Stay in touch. You'll do great things. Regina organized a small afternoon gathering in the conference room with grocery store sheet cake and coffee from the break room, the kind of farewell reserved for liked but not essential employees. She gave a short speech about my dedication and work ethic, about how I'd been an essential part of the team, about how she'd enjoyed mentoring someone with such promise. Tasha's been like a daughter to me professionally, she said, and several people smiled at the warmth in her voice. I'm so proud of everything she's accomplished here, and I can't wait to see what she does next. She hugged me at the end, held me just a moment longer than necessary, told me again that her door was always open, said I'd be back when I got this entrepreneurial phase out of my system. Give it 6 months, she whispered, a year at most, then come back. There's no shame in recognizing when you need more structure. I cleaned out my desk while she was in a client meeting that afternoon. 3 years of work fit into a single cardboard box. A few personal books, a framed photo of my grandmother, my law school diploma that I'd never actually hung on the wall. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye to anyone individually. I simply carried my box to my car and drove away from the Peachtree Street building for the last time as an employee. The relief was overwhelming, physical, like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years and finally could exhale. My consulting practice grew quietly through the spring. I didn't advertise. I didn't network aggressively at bar association events. I didn't cold call potential clients or send mass marketing emails. I just solved problems other firms couldn't solve or wouldn't prioritize for clients who appreciated precision and responsiveness over prestigious letterhead. Word traveled in specific circles, the way it does when work is genuinely good. Healthcare general counsels mentioned my name to their counterparts at conferences and informal gatherings. Compliance directors who'd worked with me recommended me to colleagues facing similar challenges. Hospital administrators dealing with audit issues found my contact information passed along through networks I'd never formally joined. My phone would ring with calls beginning, "I got your name from," and then a list of people I'd helped. People who'd appreciated that I returned emails within hours rather than days, who'd valued that I explained things clearly rather than hiding behind legal jargon, who'd recognized that I actually understood the work rather than just presenting someone else's understanding. By June, I'd replaced 3 former Hartwell clients with my own services. Not by poaching. I'd been scrupulous about not soliciting anyone I'd worked with during my employment, aware that Regina would seize any ethical violation as proof of my inadequacy. But by being available when they called with problems, Regina was too busy to handle personally. One was a regional hospital system, Mount Carmel Health, that had repeatedly tried to reach Regina about an urgent Medicare compliance question. Time-sensitive, potentially expensive if handled incorrectly. They'd sent 3 emails over 2 weeks, left 4 voicemail messages. Each time, Regina's assistant had responded with scheduling options 3 weeks out, or suggestions to speak with a junior associate who didn't have the necessary expertise. They'd finally remembered the woman who'd actually answered their technical questions during the previous engagement. The one who'd stayed late on a conference call explaining reimbursement codes in language they could understand. The one whose name had appeared in small font on the signature block. They'd tracked down my new contact information through a mutual connection and called directly. I'd responded within 2 hours, had preliminary thoughts by end of business, had a complete analysis on their desk by the next morning, comprehensive but accessible, technical but clear. They'd terminated their Hartwell relationship and signed a retainer with me within the week. When Regina found out, and of course she found out, Atlanta's legal community was too small for that kind of client movement to go unnoticed. She'd called me. Not angry precisely, more disappointed, like I'd violated an unspoken understanding. "Tasha, I'm surprised," she'd said, her voice carrying that maternal concern. "Mount Carmel was our client. It's not appropriate to solicit them." "I didn't solicit them," I'd said calmly. "They contacted me with a time-sensitive issue. I responded. I'm not going to turn away clients who reach out directly, but you worked on their account while you were here. That creates ethical issues. I worked on their account while you took credit for it. I don't think ethics is the framework you want to use for this conversation." Silence. Then, "I don't think that's fair, Tasha." "Neither do I, but here we are." She'd hung up shortly after. We hadn't spoken since. By September, I'd moved into actual office space. Nothing fancy, a small suite in a midtown building, 2 offices and a reception area, but professional, clean, mine. The first time I'd walked into the empty space, I'd stood in the center of what would become my office and felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain this time, something else. Space, possibility. This was mine. No one would walk in and claim credit. No one would reposition me against walls. No one would pat my arm and tell me I was good at research, but needed to develop strategic maturity. I hired my first associate in November, Kendra Washington, a brilliant woman from Emory Law who'd been overlooked at her previous firm despite consistently excellent work. I'd met her at a healthcare compliance seminar where she'd asked questions that revealed thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Questions that exposed gaps in the presenter's logic that no one else had noticed. We'd talked afterward. She'd mentioned, carefully, that her firm didn't seem to recognize her contributions, that she felt invisible despite doing what she knew was good work. I'd heard my own story in her voice. I'd offered her a position the following week, $115,000, $40,000 more than her previous firm had paid her, full benefits, her name on her work, credit for her insights, acknowledgement of her contributions. She'd cried when she'd accepted. "I didn't think this kind of thing existed," she'd said. "A place that actually values the work you do." "It didn't," I'd said, "so I built it." I didn't follow Regina's career intentionally, but Atlanta's legal community is small enough that information travels whether you seek it or not. People assume you want to know about your former colleagues, your former firm, your former mentor. They tell you things at networking events, at conferences, in casual conversations that aren't really casual. She'd made managing partner of the entire healthcare division, not just compliance. Bigger title than anyone had expected. Bigger salary, bigger office, more responsibility than she'd ever carried personally, more strategic decisions than she'd ever made independently. She was being celebrated as one of Atlanta's rising legal stars, a woman to watch, a leader reshaping healthcare law. The problem with building a reputation on other people's work is that eventually you have to do the work yourself, and eventually people notice when you can't. In March of my second year in independent practice, Hartwell landed their biggest healthcare client yet, Meridian Health Systems, a regional hospital network navigating a federal Medicare audit worth $2.3 billion in potential penalties, complex compliance review, regulatory documentation going back 7 years, multiple facilities across 3 states, exactly the kind of high-stakes, technically demanding work Regina had built her reputation on, exactly the kind of work I'd actually done while she took credit. I heard about it first through Kendra, who maintained connections with her Emory network. "Hartwell got Meridian Health," she'd mentioned over coffee one morning. "Huge client. Regina's leading it personally." Then through a former Hartwell colleague who called to catch up, casually mentioning that Regina had requested a team of 5 associates for the project, that she was working longer hours than anyone had seen before, that she seemed stressed in a way that was unusual for her. Then through another former colleague who said, more directly, that Regina was struggling to find anyone on her team who understood Medicare reimbursement codes at the level she'd presented to Meridian's board during the pitch. She'd trained associates, certainly. She'd mentored them in research techniques, in client management, in presentation skills. She'd developed people who were competent at executing work she assigned. But she'd never actually taught anyone to think strategically at the level she'd claimed as her own expertise, because that level had been mine, and she'd never actually possessed it herself. The first email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Subject: consulting, opportunity, urgent. I was in the middle of a client call when it came through, so I didn't see it until an hour later. The preview on my phone showed Regina's name, which I hadn't seen in my inbox for over a year. Tasha, I hope you're well and that your consulting practice is thriving. I've been following your success with great interest. Several colleagues have mentioned your excellent work, and I'm genuinely thrilled to see you building something meaningful. You've clearly found your path. I'd love to discuss a significant consulting opportunity that would benefit both of us and could represent excellent exposure for your growing practice. Would you have time for coffee this week? Best, Regina. I read it twice, carefully analyzing the tone. Professional but warm. Complimentary but not effusive, suggesting mutual benefit while hinting at urgency. The subtext was clear. I need something from you. I drafted a response immediately, before I could overthink it, before old patterns of people-pleasing could assert themselves. Regina, thank you for reaching out and for the kind words about my practice. Unfortunately, I'm at full capacity with current clients and not taking new projects at this time. I appreciate you thinking of me. Best wishes, Tasha. Professional. Polite. Grateful for the thought, but unavailable. I hit send before I could reconsider, before I could wonder what the opportunity was, before I could calculate what she might be willing to pay, before the old version of myself could whisper that maybe I owed her something, that maybe saying no was petty. Her response came within an hour. Tasha, I completely understand you're busy. That's wonderful and exactly what I'd hoped for your practice. But I want to be direct. This is a major opportunity. Hartwell's largest healthcare client facing a critical federal audit. Partner-level compensation for contract work, well above typical consulting rates. Your expertise would be invaluable, and frankly, the timeline is aggressive enough that we need someone who can work at the highest level immediately. Can we talk by phone today? I really think you'll want to hear the details. Regina. The desperation was subtle, but present. The need underneath the professional language. She needed me. I let it sit for 2 days. During those 2 days, I received 3 more pieces of information through the informal network that exists beneath official channels. Regina had approached 2 other healthcare compliance consultants, both of whom were already engaged on other Hartwell projects and couldn't take additional work. She'd reached out to a former colleague who'd retired to Tennessee, who'd declined due to health issues. She'd contacted a specialist in Chicago who'd quoted rates so high Hartwell had balked. She was running out of options, and the Meridian project was already behind schedule. On Thursday, I responded, Regina, I'm sure you'll find excellent support from your team. You've always been skilled at developing talent. Wishing you success with the project, Tasha. The compliment was genuine. She was skilled at identifying talent, at extracting maximum value from capable people, at positioning herself to benefit from their work. She just wasn't skilled at doing the actual work herself. The third email arrived Friday evening after I'd left the office. I read it from my apartment, sitting on my couch with a glass of wine, watching the Atlanta skyline darken through my windows. Tasha, I'm going to be more direct than perhaps I should be. The Meridian Health audit is beyond my current team's capacity in certain technical areas. I need someone with your specific expertise in Medicare reimbursement structures and compliance documentation. I'm prepared to offer you a 6-month contract at senior partner rates, $600 per hour, full credit on all work product, your name on everything. This would be a genuine partnership, not an assistant role. I know I didn't always give you the recognition you deserved when you worked here. I see that now, and I want to correct it. This would be a chance to change that dynamic, to work together as equals. Can we please discuss Regina? $600 per hour, 3 times my current consulting rate. For 6 months, that would be substantial money, enough to expand my practice significantly, to hire another associate, to move into better office space. She'd acknowledged, however indirectly, that she'd failed to credit me appropriately. She'd positioned this as correcting past mistakes, as offering genuine partnership. It was well crafted, almost compelling. I thought about my grandmother, about the sacrifices she'd made to help me get through law school, about the practical wisdom she'd always offered. Take the opportunity. Build your future. Pride doesn't pay bills. I thought about my practice, still young, still vulnerable, about how this contract could accelerate growth, could provide financial stability, could open doors. I thought about all the rational reasons to say yes. Then I thought about standing against that boardroom wall while Regina presented my work as hers, about 3 years of invisible labor, about the development plan that documented me as perpetually unready, about being told I needed supervision to do work I'd been doing independently all along, about the moment she'd casually dismissed my capability in front of executives, had reduced 6 months of my strategic thinking to data collection, had positioned me as competent enough to trust with complex research, but somehow not competent enough to understand its implications. I didn't respond. A week later, Kendra mentioned she'd been contacted by a Hartwell recruiter asking if she knew anyone with advanced Medicare compliance expertise. I didn't mention you, she said quickly, reading something in my expression. I figured if they wanted to reach you, they could reach you directly. They already have, I said. Are you going to help them? I thought about how to explain it, about the difference between revenge and boundaries, about the difference between withholding help out of spite and simply being unavailable because I'd built something that didn't include them. No, I said simply. Good, Kendra said. Then softer. You don't owe her anything, you know. Whatever she's asking for. I know. Another week passed. My former desk mate from Hartwell called, ostensibly to catch up, but really to deliver a message. Regina's losing it, she said, her voice low like she was worried about being overheard, even though she was calling from home. The Meridian audit is a complete disaster. She's working 16-hour days, and the client is getting nervous. They're asking questions about her actual expertise versus her presented credentials. There's talk of them requesting a different lead partner. She paused, then, she asked me if I knew how to reach you personally, like maybe your cell number wasn't working or your email was bouncing. I told her I'd pass along the message if I talked to you. What did you tell her? That I'd mention it if we spoke, but I'm not going to push you. What she did to you was fucked up, Tasha. Everyone knew it. Nobody said anything, but we all knew. And yet nobody said anything. I know, I'm sorry. For what it's worth, people are noticing now. The work she's producing without you isn't the same quality. She's working 3 times as hard for half the results. The clients are noticing the difference. We talked for a few more minutes about other things, mutual friends, office gossip, life outside of Hartwell's demanding ecosystem. But the real message had been delivered. Regina was struggling publicly. The reputation she'd built on my work was cracking under the weight of work she couldn't do herself, and she needed me to save her. Another week. The legal community in Atlanta is genuinely small, intimate in the way professional communities become when everyone knows everyone, when reputations are built and destroyed in quiet conversations over coffee, in private assessments shared at conferences. Hartwell's handling of the Meridian audit was becoming known, not for brilliance, but for concerning delays, surface-level analysis, and a lack of the technical depth The client had been promised. Meridian's general counsel had requested a meeting with Hartwell's executive team to discuss concerns about the engagement. Questions were being asked about Regina's actual expertise versus her presented credentials. The concern wasn't accusatory yet, but it was serious. It was the kind of concern that preceded decisions to change counsel, to seek expertise elsewhere. My phone rang on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing a compliance filing for one of my pharmaceutical clients. Unknown number, Atlanta area code. Something in my gut told me who it was before I looked at the screen. I let it go, to voicemail. "Tasha, it's Regina." Her voice sounded different, tired, stripped of its usual professional polish, almost raw. "Please call me back. This is important. The Meridian situation is complicated, and I really need your expertise on this. Not as a favor, I'll pay you whatever rate makes sense. Market rate, above market rate, whatever you need. I really need your help. Please call me." I listened to the message twice, heard the desperation that she'd finally stopped trying to hide, heard the acknowledgement, implicit but real, that she couldn't do this without me. I deleted the message. 2 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, she appeared at my office. No appointment, no warning, no email requesting time. She simply appeared in my small reception area and told my assistant, a sharp young woman named Jennifer who'd joined me a month earlier, that she'd wait until I was available. I was on a client call when she arrived. Jennifer sent me a text. "Regina Cole is here. Says she'll wait." I finished my call without rushing. We discussed timelines, reviewed deliverables, confirmed next steps. 23 minutes. When I emerged, Regina was sitting in one of the waiting area chairs, scrolling through her phone with the kind of forced casualness that suggested actual anxiety. She stood when she saw me. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, older. There were circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, and her suit, still expensive, still well-tailored, hung slightly differently, like she'd lost weight without adjusting her wardrobe, like she'd been working too hard, sleeping too little, carrying stress that was taking physical form. "Tasha, thank you for seeing me." "I'm between meetings," I said neutrally. "What do you need?" She glanced at Jennifer, then back at me. "Can we talk privately?" I led her into my office, smaller than hers. No floor-to-ceiling windows, no custom furniture, no view of downtown Atlanta's skyline, but mine. Decorated with my degrees, my certifications, my awards, all in my name, no shared credit, no borrowed glory. She sat in the client chair. I stayed standing initially, maintaining physical advantage, then sat behind my desk with deliberate slowness. "I'll be direct," she said, adopting the tone of someone preparing to negotiate from a position they recognized as weak. "The Hartwell healthcare audit for Meridian Health is beyond my team's current capacity. I need someone with your specific expertise. I'm prepared to offer you a 6-month contract at senior partner rates, full credit, your name on everything, a real seat at the table." I waited, said nothing. Let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "I know I didn't always give you the recognition you deserved when you worked at Hartwell," she continued, each word sounding rehearsed, practiced in front of mirrors, refined through multiple drafts. I was focused on the bigger picture, on firm, politics, on maintaining client relationships. I didn't adequately acknowledge your contributions, and I regret that. This would be a chance to change that dynamic. A real partnership, Tasha, true collaboration. Equals. "I appreciate the offer," I said calmly, "but I'm not available." "Tasha, please." The professional veneer cracked slightly. "I'm asking you to help me. I'm being honest with you, more honest than I probably should be from a professional standpoint. This audit is exposing gaps in my team's expertise, gaps that you could fill. I need you." The words hung between us. I need you. 3 years of invisible work. 3 years of standing against walls while she took credit. 3 years of being told I wasn't ready, wasn't capable, needed supervision to develop strategic maturity. 3 years of making her look brilliant while she collected promotions and profiles and corner offices and managing partner titles. Now she needed me. Finally, urgently, publicly needed me. And I was being asked to save her from the consequences of claiming expertise she'd never actually possessed. Regina, I'm truly at capacity with existing clients. I can't take on additional work right now. You could refer someone, recommend a resource. There must be someone in your network with the right expertise. I don't know anyone available for that level of work. It wasn't technically a lie. The people with that level of expertise were either already employed, already engaged, or expensive enough that Hartwell would balk at their rates. She stared at me, and for the first time in our entire professional relationship, I saw her actually see me, not as a convenient tool, not as a promising junior attorney who needed her guidance, but as someone with power she'd never acknowledged, someone whose absence created consequences she couldn't manage, someone who'd built value she could no longer access. I made you, she said quietly, the professional veneer finally shattering completely. Everything you know, I taught you. Every skill you have, I helped you develop. This practice you've built, it exists because of the foundation I gave you. I smiled. The same smile from the boardroom, the same smile from my exit interview, the smile I'd perfected while watching her take credit, while standing against walls, while being told I needed more development. Then I'm sure you can handle it, I said softly. You're an excellent mentor. You've said so yourself. I stood and walked to the door, opening it with clear finality. She remained seated for a moment, processing what had just happened, understanding, perhaps for the first time, that this wasn't a negotiation she could win. Then she gathered her bag slowly, her movements careful, controlled. Someone trying to maintain dignity while experiencing defeat. At the doorway, she stopped and turned back. I gave you opportunities nobody else would have given you, she said, not angry, just factual, stating what she believed to be truth. A black woman from Alabama with no connections in Atlanta, I took a chance on you. You gave me work nobody else wanted to claim, I said, matching her factual tone. There's a difference between opportunity and exploitation, but I appreciate you helping me understand that distinction. She left without responding, her heels clicking against the hallway floor with diminishing volume until the sound disappeared entirely. The Meridian Health audit didn't go well. The client grew increasingly concerned about Hartwell's inability to provide the technical depth they'd been promised. After 2 months of inadequate progress, delays that created additional complications, analysis that stayed at surface level when they needed deeper expertise, Meridian moved to a boutique firm specializing in Medicare compliance. Ironically, it was a firm I'd consulted with on previous projects, though I wasn't involved in their Meridian work. The coincidence wasn't lost on anyone in Atlanta's legal community. Several other Hartwell Healthcare clients followed over the subsequent months, uncomfortable with the growing gap between Regina's presented expertise and her demonstrated capability. The distance between the reputation she'd built and the work she could actually produce became increasingly apparent. Regina remained managing partner of the healthcare division. She kept the title, kept the corner office, kept the salary, but the shine dulled. The speaking engagement slowed. The industry profile shifted from visionary leader reshaping legal strategy to experienced administrator managing established client relationships. She stayed in her position, but the trajectory had changed. The upward momentum had stalled. The future she'd been building, the one constructed partially on my invisible labor, had fundamentally altered. I heard through various connections that she'd tried to rebuild her healthcare practice's reputation, that she'd hired expensive consultants to provide technical expertise her team lacked, that she'd worked herself to exhaustion trying to recapture the reputation she'd built on foundations she'd never personally constructed. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I didn't explain to anyone what had really happened in that boardroom 3 years ago, how I'd been dismissed after developing the work she'd presented as her own, how 3 years of my expertise had been translated into her reputation. I just stayed unavailable. My practice continued growing, real growth, built on actual capability rather than borrowed brilliance. I hired carefully, ensuring every person I brought on was valued for their own expertise, was credited for their insights, was acknowledged for their contributions. I created the environment I'd wished I'd worked in when I'd stood against that boardroom wall. In October, I received an invitation to speak at the Southeast Healthcare Compliance Conference, the same conference where Regina had been keynote speaker 2 years running, where she'd been celebrated as an industry thought leader, where people had sought her guidance and her wisdom. My topic was listed as Building Strategic Expertise, Beyond Surface-Level Compliance. The conference organizers mentioned that registration for my session was already tracking higher than expected, that people were specifically requesting my topic, that my reputation had developed significantly. I accepted. My session was scheduled opposite Regina's. When I arrived at the Georgia World Congress Center and saw the program board, her name was there. Smaller font than before, smaller room. Her topic: Managing Healthcare Compliance Teams in Complex Regulatory Environments. She saw me in the hallway before my session, near the registration area where people picked up badges and materials. We made eye contact across the crowd of attorneys and compliance professionals, across the space between the career she'd built, partly on my work, and the career I'd built entirely on my own capability. She didn't approach, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge me beyond that moment of recognition, that brief eye contact that conveyed everything that needed to be said. I nodded once, a professional acknowledgement between colleagues. Then I turned toward my session room. It was packed, standing room only. People had specifically requested my topic, the conference organizer told me, approaching me before I started. They'd had to move to a larger room twice during registration to accommodate demand. They were thrilled with the turnout. I delivered it without notes, drawing on years of actual experience, the work I'd done in silence, the knowledge I'd built while being told I wasn't ready, the expertise I developed while someone else claimed it as theirs. I talked about building genuine capability rather than borrowed credibility, about the difference between understanding material deeply enough to explain it clearly and understanding it just well enough to present someone else's explanation, about the importance of giving credit, of developing others authentically, of building reputation on real expertise rather than extracted labor. I didn't mention Regina by name. I didn't need to. The people in that room understood the subtext, recognized the themes, knew the patterns I was describing, because many of them had experienced versions of the same dynamic. The Q&A ran 30 minutes over schedule. People stayed. They wanted to know not just what I knew, but how I thought, how I developed my approach, how I built my practice. They asked questions that suggested they were navigating similar challenges, seeking similar paths. Afterward, a young Black woman approached me. She looked about 26, maybe 27. Professional clothing, careful presentation, but her eyes held something I recognized immediately. She introduced herself as Maya Jenkins. She worked at a mid-size firm downtown. She said she was good at her job, really good, but her managing partner kept taking credit for her work, kept positioning her as developing, despite consistently excellent performance, kept promising advancement while keeping her in supporting roles. "How did you know when it was time to leave?" she asked. I thought about Regina standing in my office 6 months ago, asking for help I no longer had any obligation to give. About the moment I'd stopped being available for someone who'd only valued me when I was useful. About the development plan that had documented me as perpetually unready while I did work she couldn't do herself. About my grandmother's voice asking if this was my moment. About standing against that boardroom wall. About 3 years of invisible labor finally becoming visible on my own terms. When staying meant continuing to make someone else's career instead of building my own, I said. When the cost of being undervalued exceeded the perceived safety of staying in place. When I finally understood that being told I wasn't ready was really about keeping me available. She nodded slowly, like she'd already known the answer, but needed to hear someone else say it, needed permission to trust what she already understood. I gave her my card. Not because I was hiring immediately, though I might be soon, because someone should have told me 3 years earlier that I was worth more than standing against walls. Because someone should have said that being dismissed after doing excellent work wasn't development, it was exploitation. Because she deserved to know she had options, had value, had capability that existed independent of whether anyone acknowledged it. If you want to talk about what building your own practice looks like, call me, I said. Even if it's just to think through options, even if you're not ready to leave yet. She took the card carefully, like it mattered, like it represented something important. I drove home through Atlanta traffic that afternoon, past the Peachtree Plaza, where my career had been publicly dismissed, past Hartwell's building with its corner offices and borrowed reputations, past the life I'd left behind when I'd finally understood my value. My phone showed 3 missed calls. 2 were clients with project questions. 1 was an unknown number with a 404 area code. No voicemail. I didn't call it back. Didn't need to. I knew who it was, and I knew what she wanted. That evening, my grandmother called from Birmingham, her weekly check-in that had become ritual over the years. She asked how the conference went, if people had recognized my work, if I'd felt respected, if the sacrifice had been worth it. They did, I said. It went really well, Grandma. Really well. Good, she said, satisfaction warm in her voice like sunshine. That's good, baby. Your grandfather used to say the best revenge is being too busy for people who wasted your time. He'd be proud of you. I'm proud of you. I smiled, looking around my home office at the life I'd built, at the practice that bore my name and reflected my values. He was right. He usually was. You coming home for Thanksgiving? Already got my tickets. 3 days. I'll be there Wednesday night. Bring that Tahari suit. I want to see it. The one you wore when you knew you were good. After we hung up, I stood in my home office, the one I'd built in the 2nd bedroom of my midtown condo, the space I'd created for myself, and looked at the framed credentials on the wall, my name, my degrees, my expertise, no longer borrowed or diluted or claimed by someone who'd never actually understood it. The unknown voicemail from earlier turned out to be from a recruiter, a Fortune 500 healthcare company looking for a vice president of healthcare compliance. They'd heard me speak at the conference. They'd been impressed by the several people I'd apparently worked with previously who'd recommended me enthusiastically, unprompted. They wanted to discuss opportunities, 6 figures, substantial benefits, a team to build, real leadership position with actual authority. I saved it to return Monday. Then I opened my calendar and blocked off Thanksgiving week. Time with family, time away from work, time for myself, which I'd learned to value, which I'd learned was not selfish but necessary. Regina had taught me something valuable, though not what she'd intended. She'd taught me that being underestimated by people who needed me was temporary, a condition that existed only as long as I accepted it, only as long as I remained available for exploitation. But choosing to stay underestimated was a choice I'd stopped making the day I'd walked out of Hartwell's offices with my box of personal items and the knowledge that I was worth more. The audit she couldn't finish without me had cost Hartwell 3 major clients and damaged a reputation built on work she'd never actually done herself. Her inability to deliver at the level she'd claimed had become publicly apparent in a way that couldn't be spun or presented away, couldn't be hidden behind polished presentations or confident boardroom performances. She'd needed me. Finally, urgently, publicly needed me. And I'd been unavailable. Not because I was vindictive, not because I'd planned elaborate revenge, not because I'd spent 3 years fantasizing about the moment she'd realize what she'd lost, about watching her fail, about proving something to her or to anyone else, but because I'd built something real that didn't include her, because I'd developed a practice based on my own capability, my own reputation, my own relationships with clients who valued my expertise directly, rather than filtered through someone else's ego, because I'd created value that belonged to me, that carried my name, that existed independent of her assessment or her approval, because she no longer had access to me. The punishment wasn't what I said or did. It wasn't a confrontation or a speech or a dramatic moment of revelation where I explained exactly how she'd failed me, exactly how she'd exploited me, exactly how her career had been built partially on my uncredited labor. It was what I no longer offered, the expertise I'd developed, the capability I'd proven, the work I'd done that had made her look brilliant, that had elevated her reputation, that had contributed to her advancement. She'd dismissed me when I had everything to give and nowhere else to go, when I was vulnerable and uncertain and willing to accept being undervalued because I didn't yet understand I had other options. I was finally unavailable when she had nowhere else to turn, when the gap between her presented expertise and her actual capability had become too large to hide, when she genuinely needed what I'd once freely provided. That was the entire conversation. That was the whole story. She remained managing partner in her corner office, working longer hours for diminishing returns, unable to recapture the expertise she'd claimed but never possessed, watching her professional trajectory flatten while she tried to maintain the illusion of capability she'd built on foundations that included my invisible labor. I remained in my smaller office across town, turning down opportunities I didn't have capacity for, building the career I'd always been capable of, finally receiving credit for work that had always been mine, creating the professional life I'd imagined when I'd first graduated from law school, full of hope and ambition. We existed in the same city, the same legal community, the same professional circles. We occasionally attended the same conferences, the same networking events, the same continuing legal education seminars. We saw each other across crowded rooms, across professional spaces, across the distance between who we'd been and who we'd become. But I was no longer in her reach, no longer available for her to use, to credit herself for, to dismiss publicly while benefiting privately, no longer willing to make her brilliant at the cost of my own visibility. That separation, that simple, permanent unavailability, was justice enough. I didn't need her to apologize publicly. I didn't need her to acknowledge what she'd done to audiences or in formal statements. I didn't need her career to fail or her reputation to be destroyed or her life to collapse. I just needed to be unavailable when she finally needed me. When the gap between her presented expertise and her actual capability became too large to hide. When the reputation she'd built partially on my work required work she couldn't do. And I was. That was sufficient. That was complete. That was justice in its most elegant form. Not confrontation, but absence. Not revenge, but boundaries. Not punishment, but the simple, dignified refusal to continue providing what I'd once given freely to someone who'd never valued it appropriately. I was unavailable. And I would remain unavailable, and that, finally, was enough. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And before you go, click on Hype to help this video reach even more people. Your support keeps these voices alive and keeps our community growing.